Hello, friends. I hope and pray that you're doing well. I'm going to continue on today in our sermon series on the final words from the cross. This time, we go to John's Gospel. It's John 19, verses 25 through 27. This is our third final word from the cross. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. This week I spent some time on the internet researching, looking at the final words of people executed here in the United States on death row. There are websites, multiple websites that catalog the final words of those who have been put to death in their particular states. It goes back several years. You can go back and read these final words. It seemed appropriate in doing a series that focuses on the final words of one who is executed, to also read about and to take into consideration other executed individuals and their final words. What I read was intriguing, to say the least. As would be expected, many of those who were facing execution used their final words as an opportunity to express their innocence. Many of those who were being put to death used the opportunity to express remorse, their sorrow for the crime that they committed that led to their being put to death by the state. Some used their last words to speak directly to the governor. A lot of folks use their last words to speak to the warden, sometimes to the victim's family, sometimes not. The most, I would say, heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching final words that I read from prisoners executed the last several years in this country were those final words that were directed to their own family members, to their children, to their siblings, their spouses, to their mothers. For example, one man executed in Texas several years back told his mother over and over again how much he loved her. Over and over again he tells her how much he loves her, and he thanks her for all that she has done for him in life. And then he says, "I hope that you can move on after this. I'll be fine. I'm fine. Thank you. Okay?" So after repeatedly expressing love for his mother, he tells her goodbye by saying, "I hope you'll be okay." This is an intimate moment where this son who is dying takes one last moment to emphasize to his mother how much he loved her. It's a beautiful and intimate scene, even if it happens between a convicted murderer and his mother in the middle of a death row execution room. And you see, our being people who are heavily influenced by Hollywood, we would really like it if Jesus' final words to his mother were more like that guy's. "I love you. I hope you can move on from this. It's going to be okay." That's in our thinking. We want to hear Jesus say something like that, right? Instead, what we get and what Mary got was, woman, here is your son. Followed by a word to his friend, here is your mother. In The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson tried to add some extra emotional drama to this moment at the cross. In the movie, Mary approaches the foot of the cross, and a guard initially tries to stop her, and she steps aside and comes on through, and she gets to the foot of the cross, and she kisses Jesus' blood-drenched feet. And then she says, flesh of my flesh and heart of my heart, my son, let me die with you. It's a very heart-wrenching, drama-filled scene, so much so that we overlook the fact that Jesus' final address, his final interaction with his mother, was nothing like that. It's still the scripturally based address. It's, woman, here is your son. That's it. That's it. Instead of telling Mary how much he loved her, or having some other type of a beautiful and intimate conversation, he says, woman, here is your son, this other fellow. But honestly, though, we should not be that surprised. In John's Gospel, Jesus' first recorded words to his mother were the words that he spoke at the wedding in Cana. You remember how it goes, that they're at a wedding in Cana and they run out of wine. And Mary goes to Jesus and says, Jesus, we're out of wine. And Jesus responds with those first words to Mary in the Gospel of John, when he says, woman, what concern is that to me and you? And this address that Jesus gives to Mary in that first word in John and that last word of John, woman, it's kind of sounding a little bit shrewd to talk to your mom that way. It's not actually a title that Jesus reserves only for Mary, right? Jesus speaks to the woman at the well, and the Samaritan woman at the well, and how does he refer to her? Woman. This woman has been divorced a lot. At the well, woman. How does he address the woman who has been caught in adultery? He calls her woman. Not a very intimate address for his mother or for anybody. In Mark, Mary comes to see Jesus, and Jesus is giving the message, hey, your mom's outside looking for you. And what does Jesus do? He looks around the room and he says, here are my mother and my brothers. A room full of people that have no blood relation to him, he calls mother and brothers, while his actual mother and his actual brothers are outside. In Luke's Gospel, Jesus goes so far to say that anyone that does not hate their blood family cannot be his disciple. Do you see where this is going? In a day and an age in which Christianity is promoted by some of its practitioners as a family first values type of operation, Jesus' very own words would seem to stand in contrast to such a claim. I love you. I love you. Thank you for all that you have done for me. I'm fine. I'll be fine. I hope that you can move on from this. Okay? For the sake of mothers everywhere, Why couldn't Jesus say something like that? Something remotely close to the goodbye which was uttered by a convicted murderer in Texas. Like, tell your mama you love her, Jesus. Tell your mama you love her, Jesus. It would make us so much more comfortable than having to hear you say, woman, here is your son. But you know, maybe Jesus wasn't all that concerned with saying goodbye. Maybe Jesus is doing something here that is bigger than goodbye. Brilliant Christian minds on more than one occasion in the past couple thousand years have stated that it is at this moment at the foot of the cross where we want Jesus to say, I love you, Mom, but instead he says, woman, here's your son. Many have said throughout church history that this is the moment where Jesus places into motion the foundations of the church. Mary, and the disciple who Jesus loved, the one who was there with Mary in that moment, the one who was brave enough to be there at the cross. Mary and that disciple leave the cross that day as a Christian community. They leave together as a different type of family. One that is not defined by blood, but one that is enlightened by the Spirit. A Christian community that is fully ordained by Christ to incorporate and reincorporate others into this community, into this family. And we, friends, we are descendants of that initial family. That family which is instituted at the foot of the cross. We are a part of that family. Jesus' final words to Mary are words that are meant to resonate with us. Here is your brother. Here is your sister. Here is your mother. Here is your family. Jesus speaks not just to Mary and the other disciple, but Jesus speaks to the entire family. Not only that, but we go so far to say that Jesus died for the family. I want you to recall, with that in mind, I want you to recall those final words by that executed man in Texas one more time. He tells his mom and his sisters there too. He tells them how much he loves them. And then he says, I hope that you can move on from this. I'll be fine. I'm fine. Take care. Okay? And I want to suggest that even though he doesn't come out and say it, maybe with his final words from the cross, Jesus is in fact saying something very similar. Despite the pain and the agony of the cross, Jesus knew that somehow things were going to be okay. Because it is into his Father's hands that he commends his spirit. There's no need for Jesus ever to have to say, I love you and goodbye. There's no need for Jesus ever to have to say, I love you and goodbye. Why? Well, for one, he has a knack for coming back. Also, through placing Mary in the hands of the disciple and placing the disciple into the hands of Mary, Jesus is saying, I hope you all can move on from this. Take care, okay? And most importantly, friends, do we really need to hear Jesus say, I love you from the cross? Do we really need one of Jesus' final words from the cross to be, I love you? Doesn't the cross and Jesus' being there, doesn't that already say, I love you, loud enough?